A waitress with a scar on her face feeds a homeless boy every day in silence, not knowing who he is. A stranger in the corner of the cafe notices her and stays. Soon, Grace's photo appears online, turning her life into a target. But the past suddenly returns not as pain, but as a circle of goodness, and changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss new stories. The diner on the corner of Main and Willow Road was up before the city. Lights were coming on just as the first bus headlights were breaking through the gray morning. The old neon sign that read Red Fern Diner crackled, as if it were yawning too. Inside, it smelled of coffee and butter and the baked goods that Lorraine, the owner, always put in the oven before it was light. That's how she said it. In the oven, not in the oven. Because that's what her mother did, and her grandmother, and now Grace. She opened her shift, as always. Dark hair pulled back into a bun, a clean apron, hands smelling of soap. Her face was like everyone else's, almost. Only on her right cheek was a pale, long scar running from her temple to her chin. It had been a part of her for so many years that it had become not a deformity, but a boundary. Everything before it was another time. Everything after it was her present. "Good morning, Grace," said Lorraine, emerging from the back room with a tray. "I've been baking as best I can. The biscuits are a bit dry, but we serve them with love, right?" "Okay." Grace smiled quietly. "And coffee?" "It's already warmed up. Pour yourself a drink. And put on some music, otherwise it's like a funeral parlor." Grace turned on the old radio. A jazz tune began to play through the hiss. She was pouring coffee into a battered mug when the doorbell rang. The first customer, the same one who came every morning at 7:13, tall in a long coat, holding a book. He sat by the window, not by the bar, not by the wall, always by the window. Grace came over. "Good morning, as always." "Yes, black, no sugar, thank you." He looked up. Her eyes were green, calm. Not once in all those days had he looked at her face the way the others did. He looked into her, and that was enough. She brought coffee and put it on the table. "If anything happens, I'm nearby." He nodded and looked back down at the book. A little later, others came in. Workers, a bus driver, an elderly couple who always argued about which sauce tasted better, and then a boy, skinny, with bangs that covered his eyes. His jacket was too big, his shoes were the wrong size. He walked up to the counter and said quietly, "Do you have water?" "Of course." Grace poured from the pitcher. "Want something to eat?" "I have no money." "And if someone treats you?" He looked wary, but nodded. She placed the soup and a piece of bread in front of him. He ate slowly, as if he was afraid that the food might be taken away. Lorraine came over and looked. "Are you crazy? It's just soup. We are not a soup kitchen." "He is a child." "Grace, it's on me." The hostess shook her head, but left. The boy looked up. "Thank you. Do you come here often?" "Sometimes." "Where do you live?" "Nowhere." "Then come here when you can. It's warm here." He nodded. Then he left, silently, without turning around. Julian, the man at the window, watched. He walked up to the counter and left money and a note. Grace read later. "Sometimes what we do for someone else is more important than what we do for ourselves." In the evening, when she was washing tables, it started snowing again outside the window, light as dust. It settled on the asphalt, turning the street into an illustration. Grace looked out the glass, not noticing how she froze. "Is everything okay?" Lorraine asked. "Just beautiful." "You rarely feel beautiful, do you?" "It happens, only I don't always notice it." "Do you know what I think?" "What?" "Your scar is not something that will push you away. It is something that will not let you pass by." Grace lowered her head. "I don't want to be pitied." "They don't feel sorry for you. They look at you and see that you lived and survived. When she returned home, the streets were empty. Only the streetlights, only the snowflakes, only her breath. But inside it was a little warmer than usual. And maybe this was the first step, not towards someone, but towards myself. Winter in Providence didn't shout. It came on tiptoe, spreading a thin frost across the glass, settling in the corners of the windows like a whisper. On the second day of snow, the city was already slowing down. Cars drove carefully, people wrapped themselves in scarves, and even the streets seemed more reserved. The Red Fern Diner was quieter, too. There were fewer customers, and the conversations were shorter. Only the jazz still sounded from the speaker above the bar, like the breathing of someone who can't throw. Grace arrived earlier than usual. She didn't like rushing. When the cafe was empty, when the lights were just coming on, when you could stand by the window with a cup and just watch the world wake up, that was when she felt like herself. There was no need to justify herself. There was no need to hide your face. No one was waiting for an explanation. And no one was asking why she had a scar on her cheek, as if fate had left an autograph. Lorraine opened the utility room door, looking at her with her usual business-like warmth. "You're ahead of everyone else again." I wanted to make some tea before the stove started to grumble. And yesterday's soup was all taken apart. "Don't even think that I didn't notice who you gave the last one to." Grace looked away. "He's a child, and he was hungry." "I'm not saying anything. Just a reminder. You have a good heart, but I'm not an insurance company. So if you want, put Julian's tip on the bill. He still pays more than he orders." Grace nodded. She didn't argue. She knew Lorraine wasn't mean. It was just that running a place for years wasn't just a chore, it was a daily battle for survival. And in that way, they were alike. The snow was slowly swirling outside the window. Julian entered the cafe, still in his coat, with a book. He didn't look around, he just nodded and smiled. "Good morning." "Good day. As always?" "Today, with milk." She raised her eyebrows. "Has something changed?" "Sometimes you have to allow yourself a little softness, even if you're not used to it." He sat down by the window. The book remained closed. He simply watched as a boy in blue gloves made a snowball outside. "That guy's coming again?" he asked quietly, as Grace placed the mug in front of him. "I don't know. He didn't say where he was going, but yesterday he smiled, for the first time. So he will come back." She nodded. "Why are you coming back?" "Because there is a silence here that is not frightening." That day the boy did not come. Grace noticed it closer to lunch. Every time the doorbell rang, her heart sank, then let go. Lorraine was silent. Only once did she come up to him and hand him a cup. "Put it by the stove. Maybe he'll come in. Better warm soup than apologies later." 3 people came in the evening. Young, loud, in coats that cost more than her entire wardrobe. They ordered burgers and laughed. One of them suddenly stopped and stared at Grace. "Are you an actress? I've seen you somewhere." She silently placed the tray in front of him. "Listen, are you from that movie with ghosts? Or from the video? The one where they burn faces? Laughter, loud, cutting. Guys, did you see it? Seriously, the scar is like a special effect." Grace straightened up, didn't shake, didn't answer. "Maybe you have an autograph? This is all?" "For now, yes." She turned around calmly. Julian stood up, walked over to them, slowly, without shouting. "Are you okay?" One of the guys stood up. "Listen, who are you?" "I'm the one who knows when to shut up." "What?" "If you think that being able to laugh is a virtue, you are deeply mistaken. Virtue is being able to shut up when there is a person nearby who has lived more than you can understand." The boys snorted loudly, but paid and left. Grace looked out the window. Her hands were tense. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, coming closer. There was no need. I'm used to it. That's the problem. She wiped the counter and turned to face him. I didn't ask you to interfere. I didn't interfere. I just didn't leave. They stood in silence. Then she sat down. He sat down next to her. The scar isn't a curse. Julian looked straight ahead. It's what's left, from the pain. But also from the fact that you survived. She was silent for a long time. Then she asked, Why aren't you looking at him? Because I'm interested in you. The silence became soft. It no longer rang. It did not cut. It only covered. When Julian left, there was another note on his account. You hold the cup as if it might break. I hold you with my eyes. You won't break. The snow continued to fall. For the third day in a row. Not blizzardly, not stormy. Stubbornly. It settled on the roofs, collected in the corners of the sidewalks, turned the city into a quiet postcard. But behind this beauty, there was a fragility, as if everything could crack from one harsh word. The cafe had become unusually crowded. People were looking for warmth, conversation, a look. Grace worked without looking up. After that scene with the mockery, she did not take a day off, did not hide. But something inside her moved away. Like a painting taken from the wall and placed in the shadows. Julian came every day. He didn't ask. He didn't come right away. He was just there. He ordered tea with milk. He read. Sometimes he didn't open the book. Sometimes he just sat while she washed the tables. His silence didn't weigh on her. It became a background, like the ticking of a clock. One morning she found a small package at the door. Inside was a handkerchief and a short letter. She didn't recognize the handwriting. It had only 3 lines. You have light in your eyes. It's just not always visible through the rain. Don't hide it. There was no signature. But she knew. The handwriting was male, and it was warm. Did you leave this? She asked that evening when she brought Julian's order. I can't write beautifully, but you know how to speak accurately. Sometimes, when I listen for a long time. Are you listening? Ever since I first saw you silently pouring soup for a boy no one noticed. She looked down. I don't do anything special. Everything special usually looks very simple. The next day, Grace's photo appeared online. Someone took a picture and posted it with the caption, Who said monsters only live in fairy tales? There were hundreds of comments under the post. Some laughed, some defended, some pretended not to see. In the evening, she turned off the phone, closed the blinds, and sat in the dark. There was a buzzing in her chest, not from pain, from helplessness. Why did you open up? She asked herself out loud. Why did you believe it? She didn't show up at the cafe, for the first time in a year. Lorraine called 3 times. Jade, the girl on the evening shift, sent a message. He came, sat, waited, didn't leave right away. Grace lay on the couch, holding an old photograph. It showed her about 15 years old before the accident, before the scar, before the fire. Her smile was open. Her eyes were clear. What if he fell in love not with me, but with the one who was before? Knock on the door. Grace? Julian's voice, quiet, but clear. I know you're there. Silence. I don't demand anything. I didn't come to find out. I just don't want to disappear like everyone else. She didn't open it. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm really scared. That night she wrote to her brother again. The letter was short. Caleb. You know what the hardest thing is? When they see you and you're not sure you can handle it. He looks. Not at the scar. At me. And I don't know who that is now. He replied the next morning. So, start with a drawing. Draw yourself. Not before. Not after. But how you feel. The rest, later. She picked up a pencil. She held her hand over the paper for a long time. Then she began, slowly, unsurely. But the line began, then another. And somewhere between the strokes, her breathing became deeper. 2 days later, she came back. No announcement, no warning, just walked in, took an apron, tied it. Lorraine just said, "There's a biscuit on the stove. If you want, try it." It didn't turn out very well. She nodded. Julian came in the evening. He didn't come up to her right away. But when she put the tea on, he looked at her a little differently, not with a question, but with gratitude. "You're back." "Yes." "For how long?" "For now, that's it for today." "That's enough." He took a folded napkin out of his pocket. "Can I leave this here?" "What's there?" He unfolded it. There was a sketch. She holding a tray by the window. The lines weren't clear, but the look was recognizable, strong, calm. She sighed. "I'm still afraid. And I'm still here." She didn't answer. She just took the drawing and pinned it to the wall, next to the menu frame. The scar on her face is still there. But in the light of the lamp, he became smaller. Or simply, he no longer interfered with seeing her, the real one. In early March, Providence was beginning to melt. Snow trickled down the rooftops, forming small rivulets that made their way to the gutters, leaving wet patterns on the pavement. The morning was filled with birds again, which had not been heard since December. The cafe smelled of fresh pastries and roasted apples, but Grace smelled something else, deeper. Not like a waitress, but like a person coming back to herself. "Are you making your coffee differently?" Lorraine asked, rolling up her sleeves. "It's become softer." "I added cinnamon, just a little bit." "Well now, not only our biscuits smell of goodness, but also our cups." Grace smiled, subtly, not demonstratively, but noticeably. The day went on quietly. People came, ate, talked, left tips. Grace didn't look for glances, but she did look for one. He showed up a little later than usual. Julian walked in, as always, silently, confidently. But there was something new in his eyes. Something that even she, who avoided unnecessary attention, couldn't help but notice. "There's a little light in your eyes today," he said as she approached. "I didn't know you could wear it as a brooch." "It's probably from the coffee." "No, it's from the inside." She sat down next to him. Lorraine watched from a distance but did not interfere. She knew when to be just part of the background. "I started drawing again," Grace said. "At night, while the city sleeps." "What are you drawing?" "Myself. Not from memory, but from sensations. Sometimes I look like a tree on paper, sometimes like a broken cup, sometimes like a woman with a flower inside her chest. I would like to see this flower. It has no color yet." He nodded silently. "And you? What do you do for a living other than sitting by the window every evening with a cup and restrained sympathy?" "I started going through my father's things. He died 5 years ago, and I still couldn't touch his papers. Yesterday I found his letters. He wrote to his mother, but he never sent them. There was one paragraph." Julian paused, then quoted almost in a whisper. "Sometimes love is not hands, it's a look. That doesn't move, even when you're in pain." Grace felt something fragile squeeze inside her. "Is this about you?" "No, it's about you, because you don't turn away, even when the whole world pretends not to notice." At that moment, the door opened again. The boy, the same one in the worn jacket, with patches on the elbows, entered the cafe. He sat down by the far wall. He looked at his plate, as if he did not believe that he could stay. Grace came over. "You haven't come for a long time." "I was busy." "Are you alive? All right?" He nodded. He took a crumpled envelope out of his pocket. "They gave me this. They asked me to give it to you. There's your name." She took the envelope. The paper was old and faded. The handwriting was firm, A man's. Grace Holloway was written clearly with emphasis. She opened it. There was a short letter inside. I don't know where you are now. I don't know if you'll recognize the name Danny West. But once upon a time, your brother was the one I pulled out of the fire, and you were the one waiting for him on the other side. I thought then, if he has a sister like that, then he's already saved. My son is without me now. But maybe the world will come full circle again. Signature. Sincerely, Daniel West, USMC. Grace felt her heart pounding so hard that even her fingers lost feeling for a moment. She looked at the boy. His eyes were like the others. The ones she had seen then, in the car. When the fire was already breathing outside the glass. Are you his son? I didn't know who he was until they found this letter. And then they said, Grace has a cafe. She has a scar. But not on her heart. She slowly knelt before him. Her gaze was soft. No tears. Only recognition. You can come here, always, without explanations. Just be. He nodded. Now I have a name, and you have light. Later, when the cafe was empty, Julian asked, Do you believe in coincidences? No, I believe in circles. And that they close themselves off? If you don't interfere with them, yes. He stood up, came over, and extended his hand. And if I ask you to stay close, then I won't leave. They stood in the lamplight, and the snow outside the window, thawing, turned into drops that quietly flowed down the glass. Everything was in its place. Even the pain. Even the scar. Because it didn't define her anymore. It was just a reminder of what she had gone through, to become the light. Spring came almost suddenly to Providence. One evening it smelled of wet snow, and the next morning you could hear birds, and the pavement reflected the sun like a mirror stretched at an angle. The windows of the Red Fern Diner were open, and for the first time in months, instead of the cold rushing in, the air was fresh, as if it had been hand-washed. Grace stood at the window, arranging the pies. A new sign, burnt into the wood, now adorned the register. Almond and Light. The name had come to her one night when she couldn't sleep. It was simple and precise. Almond, as in the symbol that something strong could be tender. Light, as in the thing that didn't need to be explained. Are you sure? Lorraine had asked a week ago when they were discussing the change. Do you really want to start this? I'm not starting. I'm continuing. Just louder. Now the cafe was different. The boy, Tyler, would come in on Saturdays. He didn't ask. He'd just sit at the far table and read. Sometimes he'd help in the kitchen. Sometimes he'd bring something, a drawing, a pine cone, a letter. One day he said, I think Dad would be calm. He was not soft, but he believed that kindness is something you do, not say. Julian came by every evening. Sometimes he helped with paperwork. Sometimes he just sat there while she washed the floor. One day he brought an old frame made of dark wood. Grace hung his drawing in it, the one of her with a tray by the window. Now it hung in the corner, under the lamp. Do you think anyone will notice it's me? She asked one day. I think everyone already knows this. Then why doesn't anyone ask? Because you are more than a scar, and more than a story. You are a place where it feels good. Sometimes they walked, without hurrying. He held her hand, not squeezing. Just so she knew, there was silence nearby, holding her. In the evening, when the cafe closed, they sat by the window. The lamps inside were still burning, but it was already dark outside. Cars passed less frequently. The city exhaled. I thought light was something you saw, she once said. But it turns out it's something that doesn't go away, even if you don't notice it. I knew it was in you, he replied. I was just waiting for you to believe it yourself. You know what's weird? What? The scar hasn't disappeared, but I don't feel its weight anymore. It's like a shirt you've been wearing for a long time. It's part of you. but it doesn't define you. This is healing, not erasing, but accepting. In the morning, she opened the drawer under the cash register. There was a box, a small one. Inside, a letter. From Caleb. You became yourself again. I saw it in your drawings. You smile even when you don't draw yourself. And that means everything is right. Under the letter was a brooch, in the shape of an open flower. She pinned it to her apron. And that day, when the doors opened and the first visitor entered, she smiled. Good morning. We have cinnamon tea and blueberry pie. Would you like some light for breakfast? And he nodded, because even if he came for coffee, he stayed for the feeling that he was expected here. And in that cafe, on the corner of Main Street, everyone now knew the light isn't always loud. Sometimes it just walks by and doesn't let go of your hand.